Jack Flaherty, thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time, and I know that we've got a lot to get into, and I'm excited to get your insight on a very exciting season to come for you and the Cardinals. But first, I'd love to talk to you about your work with the Boys and Girls Club. I know you just partnered with the Boys and Girls Club of LA to help organize a big toy drive this holiday season. I'd love to know what you're doing with them and how well that went.
That was a fun thing to be a part of. They allowed me to come in and be a part of that event and be a part of their toy drive. The Boys and Girls Club does a lot of things. I know we got involved with them a couple of years ago. We did a little book drive in St. Louis, and I've tried, through COVID and whatnot to try to stay involved and try to do something. And then this was the first time I was able to get involved in one of their toy drives, and it was a crazy turnout, just the amount of people that came through, and we were able to hand out a bunch of different gifts and whatnot, and it was it was fun. When you get to the points that we get to in life, and you can find ways to give back, it's a lot of fun to just try to be able to find different ways to do that, and we've been able to do a decent job of that. Still hoping to do more, but we've done a lot of that being involved with the Boys and Girls Club, and they've been, um, just thanks to them for allowing me to be a part of it.
Like to switch gears for a second, if you don't mind, going into your 2023 season for the Cardinals, this is obviously a big, important comeback season for you. Are you entering the season with any specific types of goals?
I don't typically enter with specific goals. It's one of those things where, I mean, there's no like, I just face things head on. Like, yeah, I didn't really pitch much last year, and the year before that, I dealt with the oblique and my shoulder. But going into this year, things are feeling really good, feeling healthy, and that's just a good place for me to be at. And it's fun to feel good again going into the start of a season. Just last year was rough with the lockout and dealing with different shoulder stuff all the entire off season. But this year, I mean, the end goal is always to win a ring, and we've been in that position the last couple years, in terms of just at least making the playoffs. But we don't play 162 games just to make the playoffs and get there. The goal is to win a ring, and you don't want to say, oh, maybe next year, maybe if we add this piece or that. It's no, we want to go win a ring, and that's the end all be all goal at the start of every season. And I've done enough watching in the playoffs the last 2 years, which is sucked. So yeah, we're hoping to not be watching for the bullpen.
And you mentioned adding pieces, and obviously you added Wilson Contreras, which is somebody you're probably going to be working with quite a bit. What have those early conversations been like with him so far?
Just getting to know him a little bit, get like just hearing a little bit of who he is and what he's like, and talking to other guys around, a couple of different guys around the league to see how he is, but just trying to make him comfortable, and then it'll pick up more once spring starts, and trying to make him just as comfortable as possible, and trying to make the transition real seamless. I know he's going to do a good job with our staff. Our staff is, we prepare really, really well, and that's what we're going to do each and every time out. Try to make it, we're going to make each other's job as easy as possible, because I know he's going to go out and prepare. I know um, he's ready to go for each and every game. So I'm looking forward to it. It'll be fun. Yadi he's obviously one of the best ever to do what he does, and but Willie will be. It'll be new, but it'll be fun.
And obviously, this is sort of the best kind of move for the Cardinals, because your roster gets you get this strong piece, and the Cubs lose a key piece of their fabric. How are you adjusting, and any difficulty at all adjusting to the fact that now he's on the other side of the rivalry, and you're sort of regrouping for a big 2023 against Chicago?
I mean, it's good to have him on our side. We've played against him enough. He's a tough one to play against, because he's a really, really good player. So it's good to have him on our side. That's pretty much the only way to think about it. Is he's got a cannon back there. He works hard. He can swing it. So not having to pitch to him in that lineup is is a plus, and having him on our side just goes a long way.
You're also coming off a 2022 season where Paul Goldschmidt, captures the headlines and sort of, takes his all-star persona and even levels up another level. What was it like watching him, with that ridiculous 2022 output, and how does he fit into this sort of tight Cardinals clubhouse?
Last year was, I mean, him and Nolan like carried us offensively. Not to say guys didn't do their parts, but when you have seasons like we had, and the offensive seasons that those guys, what they did offensively, it was just special to watch, and it was night in, night out. It was just like, okay, when he's going to do something, whether he's walking twice and getting on base twice, and maybe he's stealing a base here, stealing a base there. If runners were on, it just felt like he was going to get a hit here. He was going to drive him in. He was going to do something. And same thing with Nolan. But, what Goldie did was special, and, good. It was just awesome to see him, get the award that he deserved, winning the MVP. It was special. He just day in, day out, the work that he put in and the way he goes about his business, just the attention to detail the amount of attention that he pays to detail, it just carries over to everybody else. Like you want to be a part of that. You want to work like he does. You want to work like Nolan does. You want to just make sure you're as prepared, because how much work those guys are putting in. So you want to make sure you're on the same page. You're on the same like type of level that they are, especially with as talented as they are. Just it carries over to everybody else.
Yeah, and along those same lines, I'm sure you could probably say the same thing about being around Yadier Molina, and then also Albert Pujols last year for Pujols, and basically your entire career for Molina. How different is it going to be without those guys there?
I think it'll definitely be different without Yadi. Albert was here for a year, and he had a huge impact on everybody. Unbelievable guy to have around, be in the clubhouse, just helping young hitters. You could see it from day one. From day one, when he came into, when he showed up at spring and he came out and was in the dugout, he's talking to the young guys, helping them, trying to do little things here and there. But it'll be really different without. It'll just be. I don't know about like. I don't know how it's going to be, but it'll be weird to not having Yadi in there. He just is a presence. Like he may not say a lot all the time, but just who he is and how special he is. Um, he commands everything, especially on the field. Like he runs the entire game, runs the pitching staff, does it all. So it'll be different not having him. But we still got Wayno around, and he's been a big piece, and always will be.
Yeah, and speaking of Wainwright, like what's he meant to your career? Because you've been around him since day one, since you got
my rookie year. I come up, make 6 starts, and then he sat down with me for 2 hours after the last game of the season to just talk about whatever question I had. And we stayed in there until they kicked us out of the clubhouse. And it's the last day of the season. He wants to go home to his family. We lost. We didn't make the playoffs. And that guy is just completely unselfish. He's got an incredible work ethic. He wants to get better himself, but he wants you to get better as well. So he's pushing you to do certain things. He's looking out for this or that. He's trying to help you in terms of like your pitches or execution or whatnot. But he keeps you accountable. You may think that over the course of the game you're executing certain pitches, or that you put this ball where it needed to, and he's checking you on that and being like, well, let's actually look at it. And you go look at it, and he's like, this is where it was. It wasn't where you thought it was. And so he is continuing to just help, and then give you his thoughts, his insight, his wisdom onto when you get into big starts or big moments, and just how to control yourself and working that way.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Adam. All you.
Okay. Well, I wanted to give some extra love to Nolan, because I just you mentioned him earlier when we were talking about Goldie, and he's equally ridiculous. Have you ever seen a better defensive third baseman than Nolan Arenado? And if so, on what planet?
I haven't. No, he's ridiculous. I mean, and we had Tommy there in 19 and 20. It was really good. And then you bring Nolan in 21, and just some of the balls like that are hit, you're kind of like, oh, okay, that's a hit, or like you just you get a little frustrated, especially if it's, softly hit or just placed in a certain way. And now it's like, goes over there and you get surprised sometimes. You're like, damn, he really made that play. Like, that was fun to watch. And him and Goldie together as a tandem, because, they Goldie will pick him up sometimes on some throws, but the balls that he fields, the balls he gets to, every time the ball's hit that way, now it's almost an expectation. Like, he's gonna make that play. So it's it's fun. It's fun to play behind, or it's fun to have him play behind me and just know that, hey, you hit the ball left side. Like, it's not really where you want to hit it.
On a bit of a more serious note, you mentioned the 2020 offseason and the lockout offseason a little bit earlier. And so during that offseason and while we were dealing with the lockout, you were definitely one of the more outspoken players, and this was a different kind of lockout, right? Where for the first time fans were really able to hear from the players directly. The discourse changed a little bit. Were you ultimately satisfied with the agreement, and what do you still have your eyes on accomplishing the next time the CBA expires?
It was nice to get an agreement done. There was just a lot that kept going on, and there was some messages that were lost in it, just in terms that, you could see the way that the some of the media was handled, and um, the way that things went. But it was just a long process, and one thing that you'd like to have is you'd like to be able to work together and not feel like both sides are in complete opposition, because at the end of the day, we're just trying to put the best product on the field. And that's something that we want to be able to do and be able to work with, from players union side, working with MLB, instead of feeling like we're working against each other to, for one side to win or the other side to win. Instead of, like, if we can, figure this out where everybody wins together, that's ideally where you want to be. But it was just a long process, a lot of phone calls, a lot of meetings, and it was nice to finally get done and get back to playing baseball.
Yeah, and on a lighter note, you wrote in the Players Tribune, I want to say it was in 2020, about
Mhm.
Kobe Bryant and what he's meant for you. Like, I was wondering if you could kind of go into what he has meant for you, because obviously he seems like he's had a pretty big impact on you.
Yeah, he's just that athlete that, when you look at, I think growing up in LA, like Jeter is my favorite athlete ever. I think, it's that kind of goes under the radar, like, just because of how much I, put out for Kobe and what he was, especially growing up in LA. And just when you look at athletes in that time, I think a lot of people, even in, obviously in that sport, in basketball, looked up to him, still look up to him. And some of it was the work ethic, some of it was his outlook, some of it was, people wanted us to talk about that Mamba mentality and whatnot. But it's so much different than that. It was just about the ideas of being able to do everything you can to, each and every day, to just get a little bit better, just to get better, from one day to the next, or 1 hour to the next, and continue to do everything that you possibly can, or everything that is involved in your life, making sure that it's furthering you forward. And if you just, you listen to his interviews, or you listen to the way that he talked, or the way that, interviews he did post career, he really just, like, that he did everything he possibly could. And at the end of the day, if you do everything you possibly can, then you're gonna be able to sleep better at night. And at the end of the day, you're gonna look back at the end of your career and be like, I did everything I possibly could. There's nothing, I can't have a single regret. I can't be like, oh, I wish I had done this more. I wish I had done that. Um, and that's when he talks about. He talks about that with the movie Rudy. Like, he's like, that became his favorite movie because he felt that if he just could work that hard and day in, day out, like, at the end of it, like I said, at the end of it, it was just going to be that he, or anybody, you're gonna feel better at the end of the day if you do everything you possibly can. you're not going to have any regrets of, I wish I did this more. I wish I did that.
Awesome. And I know that, you've channeled that Mamba mentality in your life and your career. I know you have your own brand though called Don't Think. And I hear that you're launching a new line in a program this spring. I would love to know more about your mentality behind that and the things to come there from your own brand.
Yeah, so that started prior to 2017. I was just um, going through and thinking about, I had a rough, right. I didn't have a great 2016 season in A ball, and I had to figure out, what made me the player that I was, and why did I get drafted where I was? Where did my confidence come from? What kind of player did I want to be? What made me good? And I kind of came and developed that into Don't Think and figuring that part out. And for me, it was, what's it like when I'm going good? When I'm pitching well, if I was pitching well in high school, what was going through my head? And there was like the common answer, the common theme was that nothing was going through my head. It was just being locked into a zone and being able to just like be right here, but also be able to see the whole picture and be able to know everything that's going on, whether it's runners being on, what the situation is, who's hitting and whatnot, but being locked into a zone where things aren't being, where I'm not overthinking anything. And for me, it just get into that zone where it's just like we're locked in on what's going on in front of me. And so for me, Don't Think is where I'm at when I can be in this, what they call the zone. So that's where that came from. That's where that started. And the more times that I can get to that, the more times I can get to that space. And sometimes it doesn't, sometimes you have to be able to go from being in the dugout because that's where you do your processing. You go over the last inning, you go over the little bit, you figure out, what's going on in the game, where are we at in the situation. And you go through all that and you get out to the mound and then you step onto the dirt and you step onto the mound, and that's where all thought goes away. If you've done your preparation, if you've done your work, if you've done everything you possibly can, now it's just about competing, and now it's about trying to be in that flow state or be in that zone. And that's where it came from, and that's really about where that came from and how that developed and how that started into turning into a little bit of a brand, and trying to figure out, still trying to figure out where we're going to go from there. But that's the idea behind Don't Think.
Awesome. And that flow state is obviously so important. I felt that in our line of work, but obviously, it's different when you're humming along on the mound. That's awesome to hear. And you mentioned your early days and getting in that zone like at a young age and realizing that mentality was, the befitting. You went to high school with Max Fried, with Lucas Giolito. We spoke to Lucas a couple weeks ago, and he told us a story about a time he broke Max's nose with a pitch. Do you remember this? Where were you when this went down?
Yeah, oh man. Yeah, we did a little inner squad, and they were both pitching that day. Max was pitching, Lucas was pitching. And at that time, Lucas could get a little erratic. He was throwing 95 to 100 as a senior in high school. And I was playing shortstop. And, I was a sophomore. And one pitch got away, and you weren't really sure if it hit him. Like in the very split second, you saw a pitch go away, go up and in, and it went to the backstop, and you weren't really sure if it hit him because you're like, okay, well, it probably would have gone another direction. You can just hear Max go, my nose, like, and like holding it, and then you could see him pull his hand away, and there's just blood coming out, and you're like, all right, this probably isn't really good. And he just like couldn't feel anything on the like his nose. He couldn't feel anything. It was one of those things that was just like, this can't be real. Like, there's no way. And I think he came to school the next day, obviously, like all bruised up in here, like it like grazed the tip of it grazed his nose. Thankfully, it didn't hit anything more than that, but he's all bruised up in here and had all of that going on. So he toughed it out. I mean, to take whatever it was, 95, 96, 97 off the nose and, come in and, not at, you could obviously see something happen, but he toughed it out. He walked off the field, like holding his nose, sat in the dugout until they got him out of there. And then the hardest part was that it was like, okay, I guess we got to continue practice. That's how it was. Max toughed it out. Like he didn't go down. He didn't he stayed up and like all props to him. That's a tough dude. And then I remember going to talk to Lucas because I was like, we had to somehow like that's a crazy feeling when like not a good one, but you just like when you hit somebody, especially neck and up, and especially your friend, like in that situation in high school, like you just feel weird. And so trying to get him back to normal where we continue practice because it was like, he had to get back on the mound. And I was just like, I'm really glad I'm not the next guy up right now because that's a tough thing. And it's tough for him, but we continued on with practice, went about business as usual. Max was all right, and now we're here.
He didn't have to wear like that Rip Hamilton face mask with the Pistons, did he?
No, he didn't have to wear it at school, but he did. He did wear a mask the rest of the year when he hit. He did have to. He did wear like like you would wear in Little League. He did wear one of those the rest of the year. This was before like the flaps were a thing, so he wore a mask just like he had to as a precautionary thing because otherwise, if he got another one off the nose, it just
Gotcha. Yeah, I was curious about that. But like on a lighter note, there's a little birdie told me you played a mean shortstop back in the day. Was there ever a time where you thought like that you could possibly make the majors as a shortstop? And do you ever have any wishes or hopes of even getting an at bat today? Or do you just not want to step into the batter's box at all?
Well, so when you ask about anybody that would have rivaled Nolan, the only other person I would have taken myself, for sure.
Yes.
I for sure would have put myself up against Nolan. I can't say that today, but if you were to put anybody else up there against him, you've got guys like Chapman and Machado and them, and they're unbelievable. I would have put myself in that category because I thought it was pretty damn good. Now, I didn't hit very well my senior year. There's a lot of stuff going on, but my entire life I grew up and I was a shortstop. Probably the I told my high school coach this before. I was like, I don't understand that he put me at third to protect my arm and for team continuity because he was like I was going to go back and forth between pitching and whatnot, and he didn't want to rotate the shortstop, and I was like, oh, I would have played short, but I played third and I was pretty dang good at it. But I could play short. And I mean, obviously like going into I did the whole summer circuit going into my senior year as a position player. I pitched only for Team USA. The All-American game I played third base, I played shortstop. They like rotated us around. But for sure. And even up until like, we had a couple conversations and it was like, yeah, it's maybe, 50-50 going into the year. And then, when I start throwing 94, 95 with 4 pitches, it was like, okay, like kind of going to make you pitch here. And my agent told me that. And, I came around to it, but, I could, the only thing I didn't do was I didn't hit for power. Like, but I could run, I could field, I could throw, I could do all of that. I just didn't hit for power. And, but I always thought, I mean, nowadays I would love for us to continue hitting. I wish it was something we could do more consistently because everybody wants to give crap to pitchers because we can't hit and this and that. I mean, we get the same amount, we get less at bats than a pinch hitter does or over the course of a year, and we hit once every 5 days. And usually one of those at bats we're bunting. And like, what do you want from us? We never see pitching, but I think I'll pass because that's what led to my oblique injury. So I'm fine with the DH now because that cost me a lot of time.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel that. And what you're saying is then you're not going to be like the next Shohei Ohtani where it's hitting 50 bombs and then
I mean, I think there's really only going to be one Shohei, but it would have been interesting if getting drafted if I did both. Um, it would have been fun. It would have been fun going to the minor leagues, pitching and then and hitting and maybe playing a position. I think that would have been a lot of fun to see if I could do it. Obviously, I'm gonna have I'm gonna say that I could. I don't know if I would have ended up being Shohei, but I'd like to think that I would have been able to do both. Um, yeah, I mean, there was times this year we were up a couple. We would look down the end of the bench and be like, we would ask, like, let me know if you need a pinch hitter today because we'll figure it out. We haven't seen pitching in a while, but we'll get in there and get it done.
I know growing up in LA, obviously coming back to Dodger Stadium with the Cardinals has some special meaning to you. But is there any other road stadium that you love to just shut that crowd up? Like, are there any road crowds that you just love to silence?
I think that's one of my favorite starts was in Chicago in 2019. One of the best starts I've had in September. Started a 4-game sweep. I mean, it's fun for us to go play there because they're very into it. They're very, they get loud. They got a lot to say, and it's fun. It's a fun environment to go play in. Anytime you go play on the road, it's usually a fun environment because usually, even if it's, not, super packed or whatnot, it's different being on the road, like being in somebody else's uh, city. They get their walk-up music and everything. Their fans are behind them and it's always fun going into tough atmospheres like that. I didn't pitch in Boston, but Boston was fun to go to this year. Um, I don't have I've had some good, some bad, and some of my worst starts in Milwaukee. I've had some pretty good ones in Milwaukee, but it's always a fun matchup just with that team and then going into that city too because um, I mean they've got me a handful of times. It's fun to come pitch in LA, just a different atmosphere. But anytime you go on the road, it's usually one of those things that might be able to make some people uncomfortable just being not being at home. But those are some of the most fun times.
And Jack, I'll let you go after this. Spring training closer than most people think. We're approaching departure date. Are there any Cardinals that we should be keeping our eyes on, and maybe some breakout players who most of America doesn't know yet, who are ready to really take that next step? Who should we be watching?
I mean, I think you've seen some guys kind of take off in the last couple of years. I mean, last year Brendan Donovan was a guy. Newt is going to take another step this year. He was a lot of fun. Uh, T.O. is going to bounce back. He's dealt with a couple injuries over the last year, 2 years. So he's going to bounce back. He's a guy when he's right, he's going well and he's healthy. He's awesome. But across the board, I mean, Tommy Edmonds one of the best defenders in baseball. Like he plays all over the place. He's unbelievable. Whether you put him at short, second, I don't know. He might have played third this year at some point. He's played the outfield, but he can do it everywhere, and he can run. I think he stole 30 something bags last year. He's a stud. And then you know, um, we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of talk around Walker and whatnot. I don't know what ends up happening there, but with Jordan Walker and but him and Mason Wynn are studs. Rehabbed a lot with those guys this year. Those guys are both studs, and we'll see what happens there. But we just got guys up and down in the outfield, and we got guys up and down in the outfield and the infield. We got arms like we got a lot of guys who can really throw it. Our rotation's our rotation. Um, Hells was unbelievable last year. Hicksy will be back. And he's got one of the most special arms that we've ever seen. So, yeah, I mean, could go up and down our roster of guys that, you know, like break out or just take another step. But, you know, you look at guys like Donnie, you look at Newt, you know, Carlson, T.O. bouncing back, Tommy, and then you got our staple guys, and then, you know, add Willie this year, and then you get our guys in Nolan and Goldie. It's just, you know, we got all the pieces there.
When you put it that way, it sounds hard to bet against you. Jack, man, thanks so much for joining us. I know everyone can follow you on Instagram at @JFlair. Is there anything else you'd like to promote?
Man, no. Just thank you guys for having me. It'll be a fun year.
Awesome. Thanks so much, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you guys.